If it's important to you, then you actually have to keep trying and keep making the effort and keep insisting and saying, I really need to have a say here. And do what it takes to get your say heard and to get your relatives' needs met. My mother was a remarkable woman. Every morning, summer and winter, she would go down at dawn or pre-dawn and swim the length of the beach. She was very tough. Over the last 10 years, her health had started to deteriorate and she was getting progressively more immobile, difficult to walk very far, and a lot of pain at night. It got to the point where we felt she really wasn't able to live on her own in the apartment, and she agreed to go into the retirement village. We moved her in there for respite care. She lasted 2 days and discharged herself, and that happened a couple of times. And she'd forget during the day just how distressed she'd been at night. She was starting to get some short-term memory loss, although she was still very with it, and she was still totally able to do her Justice of the Peace work. She didn't have any slippage in her mind for that sort of stuff at all. The manager of the resthome hospital at Northbridge said that what we really needed to do was to get her needs assessed for residential care, and I had rung up and tried to get this to happen through the outpatient system, but it had not happened. So they said next time she got short of breath, we really needed to say that she ring the buzzer there and the caregiver would come. So that's what happened. Caregiver came. They called an ambulance because that's their policy if someone's short of breath, so she ended up in North Shore Hospital. And so a reason for her wanting to be there was to get this multidisciplinary assessment done. First time she had an assessment and they decided she was quite okay to go home. We knew she wasn't going to be okay to go home. So she went home and 2 days later ended up back in hospital. So by the time she got in the second time, she was more short of breath, and so she did need to have some furosemide. It's the medication that helps reduce some of the fluid and make your lungs less wet. And so that I thought was fine. I mean, that's palliative care, that you need to make someone more comfortable. But by the time she got on the ward, the focus was really on doing lots more investigations. You know, she must have had, I don't know how many chest x-rays and ECGs in those 2 weeks. And the focus was always on her acute condition, which was a deteriorating condition of heart failure or of shortness of breath. She was at the point of needing palliative care. So there was a disconnect between the sort of care they were offering and the sort of care that she and us as her family were wanting. They gave her good care, but it was the wrong sort of care. So their care was about, let's keep her alive at all costs. And that was not what she wanted. She was terrified of having a stroke, but she wasn't at all scared of dying, and she was actually ready to die. I kept leaving messages all the time to say I'd really like to speak to the consultant, but I never got to speak to him until one evening he rang me to say that my mother's breathing was getting worse. And I said, well, look, I really, you know, we had this place for her at Northbridge. They had actually then done the needs assessment. I hadn't had the result, but they had done it. And I said I wanted her to discharge in the morning. I was going to come and pick her up, and we wanted her to go to a room in Northbridge that was waiting for her. But what he was doing was he was doing ECGs, he was sending her off for another chest x-ray. He said, well, maybe she's had a heart attack and that's why she's short of breath. Maybe she's got pneumonia. We're going to do these blood tests called troponins to see if she's had a heart attack. And I said, we don't want any of that. We expect her to get more short of breath because she's in heart failure and she's dying. And even if she's had a heart attack, what are we going to do? She's 97 now. I went in first thing in the morning. I got there about 7:30 on the ward, and she was incredibly distressed. She didn't know where she was. She had ECG monitor, she had an IV infusion of furosemide, she had a catheter in, she had oxygen, so she had tubes everywhere. And they said, oh, well, we're going to have to move her to another room because the other patients are finding her distressing. And I said, no, we're going to discharge her. I insist that I'm going to discharge her. I'm going to take her right away unless I can talk to the consultant. And I managed to calm her down, and she realised where she was, and she said, yes, I want to go to Northbridge. I was just at the point of, I need to extract her, what do I need to do? And then I finally met the first specialist for the first time. He said, well, we need to do this and we need to do that. And I said, no, we want all the tubes out. I wanted to go home. He agreed reluctantly to discharge her. You try and do it in as respectful way as possible, but it can be quite hard to try and engage the doctors and the nurses and the other staff at the hospital. They really didn't want to be bothered with a relative. And there wasn't, I can't really recall any occasions where I felt really welcome there. You know, I felt tolerated sometimes. Most of what we do is aimed at extending life and reducing suffering. Because our whole hospital system is really focused on acute care, it needs to get better at recognising when it's time to stop that and time to look at palliative care and looking at how we best look after this person in their end of life. The most important thing was that she was getting the care she needed to make her as comfortable as possible, and the focus was on that sort of care, but the focus was not on trying to extend her life. And that was the contrast, that it was just loving care and time for people to come and say farewell. It was incredibly dignified. She was treated with dignity. It was what she wanted that was the focus, and what we wanted, and not what somebody else thought she needed.